So, Nick, I don't think that many of us thought that Francis Ngannou was going to win this fight with wrestling and ground control time, but that's exactly what happened. It was a close fight, not quite the fight I was expecting, actually quite different than the fight I was expecting, but Francis Ngannou got it done, and he got it done with wrestling and control.
Yeah, it was really crazy, and in my opinion, for what it could have been and could have lived up to, it laid a bit of an egg. We knew going into it that Ciryl Gane was a really great striker and kickboxer, and we knew that Francis Ngannou had been making great improvements throughout his career. In every fight, he was showing up a little bit better with a few more tools. But it just felt to me like there was too much stalling, too much timidness, and all of that from both fighters for us to get a really great historical type of heavyweight fight, which is I thought we had the two right guys in there to do it, but I guess sometimes the dance partner really does matter, and this one just kind of laid an egg for me. I was impressed with Francis being able to take him down, but then again, Ciryl Gane has never faced anybody not only in his MMA career, but obviously in his kickboxing career that knew anything about takedowns, and he had the least grappling heavy schedule on his way to an undisputed title that I've ever seen, and that has probably ever existed in the UFC. So for Francis, a guy who's never wrestled, who's never done jiu-jitsu, probably doesn't own a white belt, to take him down and hold him there was actually pretty eye-opening to show us just how green Ciryl Gane is on the ground.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that would make a guy like a Curtis Blades a problem for somebody like Ciryl Gane, because when you think about, obviously, we'll get into in a minute, Francis's disputes with the UFC and whether or not he's even going to be around in the UFC this time next year. And so you think about what the future of the division looks like. The Achilles heel for somebody like a Curtis Blades is a power puncher like Derek Lewis or Francis Ngannou, having been knocked out by both of them. But somebody like Ciryl Gane, who doesn't necessarily possess that same God-given power, is going to really have to rectify his takedown defense and his ability to get up off the ground once he's taken down if he's going to be the future of this division, which I think he still can be. And certainly with Jon Jones now in the wings talking about coming to heavyweight, man, I don't see either one of these guys having an easy time with Jon. He actually was very active on Twitter last night saying that if this is the apex of the heavyweight division, let's go. I'm ready to make history. Actually, you know what? I might just stay retired because this isn't even a challenge. I think he's out doing things to poke the bear. But here's the reality of the situation. Francis Ngannou really didn't want any part of striking with Ciryl Gane last night. He wasn't getting hurt by what Ciryl was doing, but Ciryl was clearly the guy who was able to touch Francis more than Francis was able to touch him.
And was winning rounds,
was winning rounds, accumulating rounds. And I actually think it was 2-2 going in to the fifth round, which makes it very interesting because how do you score the fifth round? Ciryl Gane was the one who got the takedown in the fifth round, ironically enough, and then actually had a submission attempt with the heel hook, which Francis, I do give him credit for that. He got below the knee line. He was able to get out of that heel hook, and Ciryl actually has a win via heel hook in the UFC. So it's actually a move that he goes to somewhat often. So credit to Francis for applying the right technique to get out of that, because a heel hook is an advanced technique. It's not really easy to get out of, especially with somebody who knows what they're doing. And on top of that, you've got an injured knee. Right. That's a submission that attacks the knee. So I don't know which leg was injured by Francis, but if that was the injured one, even more credit to Francis for getting out of that. But it really comes down to how did you score the fifth round, because Ciryl had the takedown and the sub attempt, but Francis ended up on top because Ciryl went for submission over position there. Francis got on top and was able to finish the fight with a little bit more ground control time and kind of cement that victory. When the final bell rang, he was the guy on top doing the sort of ground and pounding. So it's interesting. I honestly could have seen it having been scored for Ciryl Gane. I think it was 2-2 going into that fifth, and I certainly think there's a case made to score it for Gane, but I'm not necessarily ready to go as far as what Chael Sonnen said and say that this is a total rob job. But do you think it was a rob job?
I do. I mean, if you're going to count the third and fourth round for Francis because of the takedown and the ground control, then you have to also credit Ciryl Gane for the takedown that he got, and he got it. And basically the tide shifted in the 5th and final round at 2.5 minutes, which is halfway through the fight. He completely owned the first 2.5 minutes on the feet, got the takedown, attempted a submission, and then 2.5 minutes in, Francis got on top and stayed on top. So I saw it 3-2 for Gane, but I'm not disappointed that there was some, bad judging and bad scorecards getting turned in. I don't think Francis did enough to retain a belt. I don't really know if Ciryl Gane did enough to earn an undisputed belt. And it kind of did feel to me like both guys just sort of conceded to a lackluster decision fight.
Yeah.
And when we really should have seen something much better. And it goes all the way through from the beginning when this fight was signed. This should have been, it had the storyline to be the best heavyweight fight we'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And not only that, it had the right characters, it had the coaches that were involved, the coach from France. Yeah, the coach that took him to Vegas and helped him get introduced with Francis's current team, and then going back and taking his new guy who was Francis's training partner. Everything about this story worked, and these guys refused to tell it.
Yeah.
All the way up and through fight week. I mean, you were hard pressed to find any sort of coverage. I mean, we covered the fight, and obviously some of the hardcores that are on in this space, they covered the fight as well. But I mean, these guys did nothing to help sell this fight, and it was sort of a game of hardball if you look at Francis Ngannou, because Ciryl Gane's never really been a talker. He's kind of somebody that the fans are into, but he's not much of a advertiser, really. Right. Francis has that scary sort of vibe about him, and he's on GQ, and he's doing this, and Men's Health, and all of that. So he is the guy who's primarily had all the weight on his shoulders, and he laid an egg as far as promoting this fight. And I think when he started to play, these antics and these boxing things and all of this stuff with the UFC and trying to play hardball with them, they said, fine, let's see how you perform on your own. We're not going to help you sell this thing. And obviously they didn't really help him with the co-main event, and the rest of the card was pretty average for a UFC pay-per-view. And
I'd go as far as to say pretty damn weak for a UFC pay-per-view.
Yeah. I mean, there were some good fights and there were some good finishes, but to be honest, the name power was not there. Yeah. A lot of these ones, like look at the one that happened in December. You had Cody No Love, you had Sugar Sean O'Malley, all open
in the pay-per-view. Yeah.
Right. I'm not even sure who opened it up last night, but it was a good fight. I just can't remember who it was.
Michael Morales, actually. We could do a video on him actually later on. He's a prospect, 22 years old, 12-0. Both parents judo black belts, but I digress. That's a separate video.
Yeah, and I think that now that Francis kind of hinted to us that he's 34 years old, he knows his window of fighting is not open for that much longer, and he's kind of interested in going into boxing, but wouldn't really entertain much of the questions that Joe Rogan was asking about the boxing, which I love Joe Rogan for doing that. Thank you for asking the question that everybody wanted to get an answer to. Unfortunately, Francis, unlike very similar to the rest of this fight week, didn't have any answers for you. And the most shocking thing of all is that Dana didn't show up to the post-fight press conference.
Yeah, he did. So Mick Maynard put the belt on Francis. Dana didn't show up to the post-fight press conference. I wish that hadn't happened. I think that even given the disputes between Dana and Francis, that the UFC boss puts the belt on the champion, especially your heavyweight champion. I'm sure that Dana's going to come out and comment on this, because Dana's the guy that gets out in the limelight, and he likes his role as a star and the head of the UFC. So I do believe that Dana will come out and do an interview on this, and we'll have some answers from Dana as to why that happened. But I want to kind of talk about now what's next for Francis, because I see it being a difficult road, right? He won the fight last night, so now he is automatically on a fight contract extension that will expire in a calendar year. So let's just call it the 21st of January, 2023. He's no longer a UFC fighter. I see really two paths for him. One is he can take a fight with Jon Jones, and that's an extremely difficult fight. I think after what I saw last night, I would think Jon would be heavily favored to win that fight, and rightfully so. And then the other option is to sit out one calendar year and then sometime in early Q1, maybe Q2 of 2023, engage in a boxing match with Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is going to have to box between now and then. Who knows what's going to happen with that? And, fights, these things change. There's always moving parts to all of this stuff. But I don't see either one of those. It's an interesting thing because you have an undisputed UFC heavyweight champion. And I think in either one of those fights, he's going to be the underdog. And in the case of a boxing match against Tyson Fury, he's going to be a massive underdog.
Yeah, and I think you better watch out because obviously they're not going to strip him immediately. But cue the knee brace. He's not fighting anytime soon. He said he tore everything in his knee, and they were very quick to come out and say that. I mean, that was the first thing he said when he got on the microphone, was that he has a horrible knee. He put the knee brace on, and every fighter that you watch on Saturday night has injuries that they're dealing with every single time, without fail. Yeah, everybody's always hurt. So for Francis to come out, that was a built-in excuse for if he lost, and a built-in excuse for if he just wants to sit around and wait until maybe the end of this year, or maybe just sit out the rest of this contract. But that might come to bite him if Tyson Fury looks to box and Francis is just some free agent that's now not involved with the UFC, and he was stripped and out of the news cycle
for a year
after this week. He'll be gone. Then Tyson Fury's not going to be wanting to fight just some dude named Francis Ngannou who's never boxed before. But the what really sells that fight is that Francis is the heavyweight champion of the world in the UFC, and he's a knockout star. That's what makes that fight entertaining, not just some guy from Cameroon who's never fought before that it looks like $1 million and wants to knock him out.
And I think the method by which he won last night makes a big difference in this too. If he had gone out there and starts Ciryl Gane, put him to sleep, and handed him his first loss, not only his first loss of his MMA career, but his first knockout ever, and I think that would have really cemented a Tyson Fury fight once this contract expired. But given the fact that he won through wrestling and he didn't really want to engage on the feet with Ciryl, is going to make a difference here. And you're absolutely right. I think that the UFC and Francis Ngannou, there's probably been some bad faith negotiation on both sides. I think that what the numbers that Francis want are probably unrealistic, and the numbers that he gets paid right now are not necessarily fair for somebody who's of Francis's caliber. So I think there's some common ground to be had in the middle here, but make no mistake about it, the UFC and their management they're not dummies. If they see that this negotiation with Francis is not going to materialize into anything as in the way of a signing, an extension, anything like that, they are going to strip him before this contract ends. They're not going to allow his contract to expire and him to be the heavyweight champion simultaneously when that happens. They're going to strip him, and they're going to put Jon Jones in there versus Ciryl Gane for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. So Francis has really got to play his cards right here. It's very difficult to sit out on the UFC to say, you know what, I'm going to flex on you. I'm not going to fight. I'm going to wait this contract out and have it pay off for you. It can be done, but it's got to be done really tactfully, and it's got to be the right moves at the right time with a touch of luck thrown in there for you to get one over on the UFC.
Yeah, and it's very rare that a fighter can win and retain the UFC heavyweight championship belt of the world and lose stock and not be as powerful in negotiations after the fight than before. But I think that might have just happened, and we got to see what happens, because I'm most interested in hearing what Dana has to say, and I think he's a calculated guy, so you're going to hear some stuff this week out of Dana, and I just can't wait to see where this goes from here.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. Guys, thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments, what did you think of the performance? Did Ciryl Gane get robbed? Did the right guy get his hand raised? And what happens next with Francis? We love chatting with you in the comments, and until the next one, have a great day.
Peace.